So our last speaker today is Dr. Laura Sbaffi, who is from the University of Sheffield. Laura is section editor for PLOS Digital Health, and she's also the associate editor of the Journal of the Association of Information Science and Technology. And if that wasn't all, Laura is also a senior lecturer in health informatics at the University of Sheffield. So over to you, Laura.
Thank you, Tristan. I knew I would be the only speaker with a problem. I tried to share the screen, but I don't think I can. So is it possible to have my slides up?
I think Tom is on it.
Yeah, I'll just pull them up now.
Thank you. Well, in the meantime, I'm really, really pleased to be here. And thank you for the invite. And what I would like to do in these 15 minutes is sharing my perspective, both as editor, but also as researcher, of how I think data sharing in general and data articles can really bridge the gap between stewardship and really high impact publications. So here I am. Because in Sheffield, we'd actually use Google Meet.
They should be visible now. Can you see them? Yeah.
Yeah. So the presenter view.
Yeah.
Okay, so the second slide at this point. Thank you. So this is my perspective as an editor. So as Tristan said, I edit for a couple of big journals. None of them is a data journal per se. But what we see in research journals in general is that basically there is a lot of excellent research coming through our doors. But then when it comes to the data availability statements, we seem to hit like a dead end, because still nowadays I believe that a lot of researchers view data sharing as a bureaucratic hurdle rather than a scientific contribution. And again, from an editorial point of view, what we like to see is paper that don't just use the data, but papers that describe and validate the data. And basically what we want to see is the rigorous work that has been discussed by the previous speakers about all the effort that goes into making a data set reliable, reusable, readable, and so on, particularly when there are high stakes, like in PLOS Digital Health, when often the patient outcomes are on the line because they rely on the data. Next slide, please. A common question that I get from colleagues, and that has been discussed already by the previous speakers as well, is why should I, as a researcher, waste hours, even days, to clean up, organize a data set for then somebody else to use it? Well, obviously now the question is, the answer actually is easy, because like it's been said already, a higher citation count, but also career longevity. So the literature demonstrates, obviously, that if a good research paper is also associated to a good, clean, reusable data set, the citation count can increase up to 25%. So it's not to, sneeze upon. But also it's a standalone publication, so it counts in terms of increased citation over time. And also I do think that data articles do have a longer shelf life than standard research papers, because if in a research paper a theory or an hypothesis can be disproven, in a good data paper, actually the usability of such data set can last for ages, much longer than the actual research paper that becomes eventually obsolete. And so basically what it's important is that we frame this data sharing and also the existence of data articles not as an act of charity, but I would say it's a strategic academic move. Next slide, please. So in health studies, but I also work in information studies, so I am at the intersection, basically, of the two fields. I often see this black box problem, and I'll give you an example. So if a paper claims that there is an AI tool that can track heart failure from a smartwatch, but then the data associated is either, I don't know, a mess of proprietary formats, or there are hidden filters, or the headings are unclear, this science is not reproducible. And that's where actually data papers can provide the key to open this black box, because they provide the space, and still looking at the same example that I just gave you, to detail, for example, the sensor used, the environmental conditions, the pre-processing and processing steps. And this is an opportunity that a standard research paper doesn't offer, because there is no physical space, or it's potentially even out of scope. So this transparency builds, obviously, trust, because by publishing a research paper, we provide the recipe and the ingredients for basically the community we are targeting to verify what we have done and build upon it. So, thank you. Next slide. And this has also been shared by the previous speakers, because I see data articles as an invitation to collaborate. So it's like saying that by putting together this well-documented data set that is highly usable, which is in the public domain, we are basically telling the communities we want to work with that our department, our lab, is actually a hub of high quality evidence. And this leads to co-authorship opportunities, collaborations, networking from people from different backgrounds. So I am an information scientist, and I'm contacted by clinicians, by computer scientists. So that basically this expands the research of the researcher and its impact, without the researcher himself having to do the research personally all the time. So basically one single project can turn into a multi-year ecosystem of research, of discovery. Next slide, please. So this has been mentioned again in every other presentation. So what is this gold standard for good data sets? Is that obviously follows the FAIR principles, because a good standard data set, it's not just a big file, basically, but it's file that is legible and it's reusable. So it can include a strong data dictionary that explains every variable, every unit, justifies the missing data. Because if researchers access a data set or want to access a data set that is not particularly user-friendly, well, again, those data cannot be used. But even the same researcher, having published the data set in the first place 5-10 years along the line, might not even recognize what they have done, what individual columns mean, what they are supposed to show, what is the structure of the data set. So it is really important that these principles are followed for the, again, shelf life of a good data set. So thanks. Next slide, please. And obviously, we've seen from the previous presentations that not all journals handle data in the same way. As I said, I edit for journals who don't have a specific data papers track. But we have seen from Derek that there are obviously, and from the other speakers, sorry, that there are data journals that focus on these technical specifications of the data sets. And then there are the subject-specific journals which can offer data tracks or data notes. For example, Giga Science is one of them. And what is important if you are thinking of publishing a data paper is to identify your audience. So, for example, do you want to reach data engineers that build new tools based on the data set, or do you want to, for example, address clinicians who need to see how to use the data for patients' benefit? So making this discrimination at the start is really important because obviously benefits the community, but also maximizes the citation of the data set and its usability and its obviously the possibility of building upon the original data set. Next slide, please. These are, in my experience, some of the biggest pitfalls in both data sharing, well, in data sharing in general, to be honest. So there is this data dump that I see so often. So I see attachments with dozens of very poorly labeled Excel spreadsheets with names like final_version2 that only the creator knows what it's all about. The proprietary formats, which are not necessarily inclusive. So they require software that could be expensive, and so they are not really accessible internationally or globally. And then also mentioned has been this privacy issue, the privacy paradox, particularly in health data. We really need to make sure that none of the personally identifiable information is available, because even the smallest breach implies that the data set is not usable. Next slide, please. And this is just to show you this before and after. So the before, so the red part of the slide is this data dump that I was mentioning before, and the after is the action of the data stewardship, basically in turning this graveyard of badly organized files into an actual library. So where there is a standardized naming convention, the data dictionary I was mentioning, the proper naming of the variables of the README file, and so on. And here, basically, the punchline of this slide is that this transformation from the baseline to the publication standard is precisely what a data article does, basically. So it's not about just publishing the numbers, it's about publishing the integrity of the numbers. Next slide, please. And this and the next slide are just two small examples. This is not, of course, a data article because it comes from PLOS Digital Health, so it's a research paper, but there is a big exercise of data stewardship in this one, because basically the researchers didn't collect data themselves. They used data from biobank. If you are familiar with biobank, you know how difficult it is to get hold of data from them. And the stewardship action here has been in linking the sensor data, so the data originally in the biobank data set, with the NHS Central Register and the NHS Digital Health Records. So basically, through this paper, they provided the methodology and the validation of what they have done so clearly that they have transformed a raw data set basically into a proper validated digital biomarker that other clinicians can use for mortality modeling. And it's a massive step forward in that field. Next slide, please. And this is an actual scientific data paper. And what makes this paper particularly good, obviously Derek showed other examples, but what struck me as a researcher and as an editor was the clarity of the structure, how well it would describe step by step the recruitment of patients, the data collection, the processing. There was some statistics included and also some marginal results, but I found it honestly a pleasure to read and very easy to follow and very easy to, if it was my field, potentially to replicate. Next slide, please. So this is just a final message specifically for data stewards and the importance they have in the publication journey. Because I think for a very long time, data stewardship has been perceived as a technical support, often just acknowledged at the bottom of the paper. But obviously in all PLOS journals and also in JASIST, we use this contributor role taxonomy so that basically it explicitly recognizes data curation and the other roles I'm listing here as proper authorship roles. So it's just important to keep advocating this. So a data steward is an author in every sense and in every respect, and obviously deserves a place in the author list. So next slide. But yeah, no, here I'm just highlighting the main points I discussed in the previous slides, so no need to go through them. And the next slide is just the conclusion. So thank you for listening, and thank you, Tom, for sharing the slides.